In this Roll for Crit review, we're taking a look at the game Marrakech. Now, this did release a while back in 2007, but I'm taking a look at the new 2021 edition. In this game, you'll be playing as rug salesman, trying to prove you're the best one out there by, well, one, having the most money, and two, being able to show off the most of your rugs. But be careful, if you're too clumsy and step on your opponent's stuff, you're gonna have to pay them for it. So this simple game becomes this clever area control where you can see if you can place your rugs just right to show off that you have the best wares to sell and offer. In Marrakech, you are playing as a rug salesman trying to prove you are the best merchant in town. And as any salesperson can tell you, location is key. Though usually they're talking a bit more about storefronts, here it's going to be area control. The way the game works is quite simple. Each player is going to choose a rug color and have a certain number of rugs depending on player count, as well as receiving 20 dirham or coins. On your turn, you're going to roll this die in order to move Assam, aka this nice little wooden figure here. Before you move, you may rotate him 9 degrees left or right, but not 180. Once you roll, Assam is going to move equal to the number of slippers shown here. So in this case, 2. Should he move off the board, he'll follow around in these little ovals, U-turning. If he lands on an empty space or one of your color, nothing happens. However, if he ends on an opponent's space, you're going to have to pay them 1 coin for each space of that area. So in this case, this would be a huge 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here, diagonals don't count, so that would just be 2. And then obviously that would be 1. After you land somewhere, you can place one of your rugs adjacent to the Assam with the following restrictions. 1, as I said before, it must be adjacent to the square he's on, not over it and not far away. It only needs one side, so you can place it however you see fit. Second, you cannot completely cover someone else's rug. You can only cover half of it, like so. However, if, let's say here, only half of it is showing, that is a legal play. If at any point you cannot pay a person what they owe, you pay as much as you can, and you discard any rugs you haven't played yet, and you are out of the game. Once the last rug is played, you're going to count up the number of coins you have, plus the number of face-up halves of a rug showing. There are 2 variants. One of them for 2 players just has you control multiple colored rugs, and another one in which instead of at the beginning of your turn before you roll the die, at the end of your turn, you will choose to rotate Assam, which causes more aggressive gameplay and more often than not, knocking more people out before the end of the game. So full disclosure, the first time I heard of this game was actually in an anime called After School Dice Club, in which each episode they played a different board game, and Marrakech was the game that they showed off in episode 1. So I had a general idea and what the game looked like, but actually getting to sit down and play it was a much more different story. It is area control. That's the basis of it. But whenever I hear the word area control, I think of armies and losing a territory and gaining in dice and trying to do this weird. It feels like there's so much more going on with area control. It's usually something that instantly puts into a high tier level style of game, something a heavier style game. This is very simple. You are just laying down rugs, rolling a die, and seeing where a guy moves. And that simplicity really helps with what I usually consider a complex thing, because then I'm like, oh, okay, I can put this rug here. I can do this. I don't have to focus on so many other things. And it really became this really fun game, depending on who you're playing with too, because that can really change the pacing of whether to do, like, some people we'd spread out really quickly, like we're trying to clump up, so you'd get more of a minefield kind of going on, but people are constantly paying each other. Then there was, of course, the people who would do, like, there could be a game where I had everyone, including myself, just do big areas. So it'd be like, for the first 2/3 of the game, that corner way over there, it's safe. No one's really put rugs. But the rest of the board, that's where all the blue rugs are. This is a purple rug area. You know, if you make one wrong step, you've got to make a huge payout. But because there isn't much else beyond the moving and paying, it was pretty simple. And you can just think about how the rugs cover each other. And speaking of which, by the way, it's like a cheat almost. I can't think of another game that uses like cloth rug as pieces, which becomes really fun to just the tactile nature of it all. But with that simplicity, I feel you can definitely see some of the cracks that you could think of any kind of game that does not have as many rules. For example, I felt like it was really good, which is as rare in many games, to go last. At the end of the game, whoever has the most coins as well as half rugs showing is the winner. By going last, in essence, you have 2 more points on everyone else. At least, that's assumed somehow you placed your last rug over just blank spaces. By covering opponents, you could technically net 4 more points than in one player if you only cover 2 halves of their rugs. So it's really powerful to not be the first person to go. The other thing is the variant. I'm never a fan of player knockout, and this didn't tend to happen in the regular rules. I think like once it did, but more in the other one where you can decide where the guy bases instead of the opponent's, instead of your own turn. So your opponent chooses what direction he goes. It sort of just feels bad to get knocked down, just sit there and watch as people are still playing some rugs and trying to either knock out or just make it to the end. It's not the kind of thing I tend to enjoy as much. And of course, that pacing thing does come back. Depending on who you're playing with can really shift how the game feels and goes. But because of those simple rules, I wouldn't be surprised. I think when I looked, there was one expansion for the old version, but maybe this new one can get some other expansions as well to spice things up. It is simple. There isn't much else to there, but because of that, it's got one of those games where it's just simple, fun to watch, see what goes on. However, I don't think the simple rules hurt it too much. In the end, it's just that. It's a game all about area control and placing pieces based on where the Assam lands. It is no surprise to me why it was picked for the anime. It's colorful, it's got unique pieces, and not only is it just visually appealing, it's quick to sit down and try out, and one that if you like the idea of area control but didn't want to sit down for 2 to 3 hours in a war game, this is definitely one to take a look at. Crits and misses for Marrakech. Crits. Well, the first obvious one I gotta talk about are components, in particular, the rugs. As of this recording, I cannot think of many games that have cloth pieces that you use throughout the game, and the texture of it and the fun of laying them down and over each other is an enjoyable experience and will also lead to a fun, clever board if you're able to fill it up completely with all the different rugs. For an area control game, it's got quite simple rules, but still some fun different strategical decisions to go on based on what everyone else is doing. I found it interesting how the game can change based if everyone's trying to spread out into as much little places as possible, or just shore up some very large areas that will cause huge payouts. Misses. Because this is a simple game with not much going on, there are some times when pacing can be an issue. When all you're doing is move piece, lay rug, if nothing's really going on and the payouts aren't happening yet, some people can find it a little bit boring and that their choices aren't really making huge differences until you hit that sort of end game moment when almost every space is covered. I feel like there's a bit of an unfair advantage based on player order. Usually in most games, going first gives you a bit of an advantage, so you may read some rules as each player after first gets an additional resource. However, it's the opposite here. Going last easily automatically can net you at least 2 points, unless the rare occasion that you're only being able to cover your own rugs. If you are near opponent's rugs, that's more than 2 points. So I feel like there should be a variant or rule such that maybe the first player gets 2 more coins, and playing in a 3 to 4 player game, the middle players get an additional coin. I did forget to mention there is a 2-player variant, but the way it works is almost as if you're simulating 4 people playing, but 2 people each are sharing money, so almost like a team battle. Personally, for me, I just enjoyed sitting and playing the 3 to 4 more just because I could focus on my one color rug rather than knowing I had 2 different ones going on. But besides that, there isn't much to it. This is a simple game, move a piece, choose which way it's facing, and place the rugs. There's a lot of weird stuff that can go on based on people spread them out and to do more of that little like spotted version or whether they do the big clumps. But it's still, just for me at least, it was a fun experience. I had people who were not as excited about the pacing, but for me, it was just set up and just the fun of like, oh yeah, all right, this plan's gonna work out. As soon as I had this big area set, as soon as someone walks in there, it's gonna be great. So I never really felt too bored. I mean, it's simplistic, but I had fun playing it. Of course, I can totally admit this is the kind of game that could use some tweaks, like I mentioned before, for like giving maybe some extra coins to the person in first, or even an expansion that adds some other stuff. But for a colorful, simple game, it gets the job done. So it does a good job of being a salesman on its own. Let me know what your thoughts on this are if you played an older edition, what your thoughts on this game are. Do you think there's a balancing issue in terms of turn order or even pacing? I'd love to hear for all your thoughts in the comments down below. And thank you so much for reaching this far. Besides the comment, if you could do the like, share, subscribe, that's the kind of thing that YouTube is looking for and helps me make some more of that coin. And of course, to all my patrons, thank you so much. All my rollers are truly the best out there. Thank you again. But for now, I'm Will, and this has been a Roll for Crit review.